investment, in some way, shape, or form, is an impact investment. The question is, how conscious are people of what they're doing? If you do one thing, you're not doing something else. If you send resources and capital in one place, you're not sending it someplace else. It is a limited resource. And so I guess, when I mentioned before that I applaud the heritage, people who have been involved in impact for such a long time. Not only do I applaud the heritage, I kind of warn, I am warning that portfolio managers and analysts all around the world that are not being conscious of what they do, that unconsciously and offhandedly say idiotic things without being aware of what they're talking about. And that makes me kind of crazy. I saw an idiot commentator on CNN, CNBC. I don't know if it was one of these analysts, a talking head, and he basically offhanded threw away some comments he made about Google's investments in drones or in Nest. And he said, they're throwing away money on this stuff and they should be doing this. And I'm thinking, wait a second. Out of hand and out of ignorance, you're simply making the statement that they're throwing away money. Like, wait a second. Can we be a little more thoughtful and say, you know what, they're not a bunch of idiots at Google. Maybe there's a reason they're investing in drones. Maybe they think that if they invest in drones, we can actually start thinking about the world's forest lands, and we can have more data about them. Maybe we can start thinking about the water tables, and maybe we could start thinking about the paths of migratory birds that matter from the standpoint of the ecosystem services. So for some idiot analyst to just simply come on and say, Google's throwing away money, prove it to me. Just let's talk about it. Let's put an appropriate analytical framework into place so people can know what they're talking about and at least have an intelligent debate. And again, my issue is, again, 25 years of listening to analysts and portfolio managers tell me everything that they know. And what I most want to hear about is what they don't know and what they want to learn. And it's why I come to forum like this, because I want to learn. And one thing I'll say relates to the extent to which capital market structures are changing in a very constructive way. And if you worry, which I do a lot, I have 3 little children, I worry, right? I'm a Jewish mother, I worry. This is what I do. But the good thing is that we are at a moment in time when I think that capital market structures are changing, all right? So there is a confluence of things going on. There is obviously extraordinary regulatory scrutiny like the world has ever known. There is the most massive concentration of economic power in the private sector that anyone has ever seen. The 1,000 biggest companies in the world control 8% of all the jobs in the OECD and 7.8% of all the revenues in the OECD. So you have this economic concentration, you have regulatory scrutiny, you have social media making everything transparent, you have big data allowing us to turn massive amounts of noise into insight. You have the most massive intergenerational transfer of wealth, something on the order of $51 trillion if you ask the World Economic Forum, in transferring into a more conscious level of hands, right? All at the same time. And you have the asset owners, the asset managers, the investment banks, the consultants, the accountants, the exchanges, the NGOs, the academics, all at the same time. Everybody's starting to think about corporate social responsibility and transparency. And on top of that, we're at the cusp of having some standards. Standards for disclosure, standards for reporting. And if you want to be listed, hopefully, on any of the exchanges, the Bovespa's doing great, South Africa's doing it, Hong Kong is doing it, hopefully in the US we'll start looking at it, but there are going to be standards for corporate disclosure, right, on environmental, social, and governance issues. So all these things are happening now, at this moment in time. So that confluence of events makes me feel a little more optimistic, makes me feel like, going back to what I first started talking about, that we are in a position where we can start demanding a more conscious level of analysis from all those mainstream analysts who I've been listening to for 25 years. And if they want to make a call, well, let them earn the right. Let them earn the right to say something intelligent and not spew out platitudes that frankly don't have any impact on anyone except potentially bad. So I'll leave it at that.
Well, thinking, as Saundra has just asked, about the future of impact investing. I think the future, to state the obvious, isn't clear yet. In order to focus, though, I'm going to take your definition, Saundra, that impact investing does not include listed companies.
No, that was not my definition, to be clear.
All right.
Some people, I actually do not believe that.
Okay.
But I am respectful of the fact that there are many who do not believe that impact investing includes public equities.
Okay, and I'm not sure where I stand, but to focus on one area, let me focus away from listed companies, just to provide an alternative perspective from Erika's. That if you're focused on intentional efforts that are designed at least as much to produce impact as financial return, if you invest the way we do, the way I've described, where you have to judge and evaluate the capacity to deliver both financial return and social impact, then there are many choices out there, and a growing number of choices. And they range all the way from NGOs to an increasingly large variety of for-profit entities with varying degrees of regulation. There's a great deal of choice out there, especially in the developing world. I think the challenge is how to match the choices of what to invest in with the choices of what the investors are interested in. And that's where institutions like yours, Saundra, come in, where you have demand from your high net worth individuals, for example, your clients on that level. There are other institutions, maybe yourselves as well, that have also endowments, foundations, or that have pension funds or other more institutional pools of capital that are looking each for their own target. And so the challenge is the biggest firms that have the biggest clients don't have the ability to focus in on the choice of these individual, very targeted, very intentional impact entities. And there needs to be partnering between those who focus on evaluating and choosing the actual companies to invest in on the ground and those who have access to the clients. And that, I think, is where the future of impact investing goes. You've already demonstrated it in Europe, where that's really the world's greatest partnership between Credit Suisse and a group that focuses on investing in microfinance. You said it yourself, you need to do it in the US. I think that's part of the future of impact investing right there. That will frankly make it more mainstream when it happens in the US to that same scale.
Just to add to that, I would say, so for future of impact investing, where I see, and when I talk future, I mean future you're going to say beyond this year, but I look at just of our goals of what we hope to accomplish at a minimum for our own platform for this year. And we hope to see the partnership of having some of our microfinance partners on platform minimum this year. So when we talk about things of future of impact investing, what I see is that we are going to have more of an institutional structure and more liquidity. Because when we talk about that there are a lot of impact investing entities that don't see public investing as an investment that even ties into a definition of impact. As you look at, it's easier for an institutional profiled foundation to say they are 100% impact invested and to be in all completely illiquid 10-year locked up structures. But as you look to family office or more mainstream individuals that would like to look in these investments, they can't have that same illiquidity profile, both from a sophistication, qualification standpoint, as well as the liquidity profile. So it challenges and presses the banks and the institutions to create and have structures that address both the liquidity and the suitability around the product that both has this sustainability and the impact, but also has the return and also has structure that meets different requirements for different clients. And so, but I think impact investing has everyone's attention at, I think, all of the big institutions. I think that we will see big changes in just the next year to 2 years, but absolutely in the next 5. And I think all the players are each trying to define their niche in the space of what they'll be doing in the U.S. markets, because I don't think any one of the big banks has really figured it out yet, one versus the other. But I think we'll see a lot of changes going on into, who kind of niches into which part of the market in the next few years. And with that, can we welcome any questions from anyone in the audience?
It's never going to be one driver. I think it's a confluence of things. And, complex problems don't get solved with this one data point, with this one answer. There have to be multiple parallel initiatives going on. And that's why I went through that list of the pieces, the structures of the capital markets that are together going to drive it. But I would also say that, whether it's listed or unlisted, it is the private sector, I think, that's going to drive it. Because the reality is the magnitude of the problem. The magnitude is too big for the public sector to deal with. I mean, think about what was spent, over the past generation to finance the energy infrastructure of our world, right? There's estimates, I heard this at the Milken Institute, $32 trillion to build the current energy infrastructure, fossil fuel-based infrastructure, $32 trillion, right? And so I was sitting the other day at a panel and I was listening to a comment from the Small Business Administration in the US that they had lined up $50 billion in loan guarantees for renewable energies. $50 billion, okay? Which you could, by the way, stand on line for like 2 years to get some of the money, $50 billion. It is a drop in the bucket from the standpoint of what we need, right? And so from my standpoint, if we're just looking to public sector, first of all, you've got to have public-private partnerships to drive things, because again, you need the infrastructure, right? Which is a regulatory infrastructure. You've got to have, it's like management in a good company and a board. It's about infrastructure, right? To make it scalable. So you need intelligent public-private partnerships, but it has to be, in my view, the private sector, because the private sector is already so far ahead of the investment community, the mainstream investment community, and the public sector in terms of understanding how you have this, this race to the top, right? So I think the public sector has a lot to learn from the private sector. I think the private sector leads the way. And again, with transparency, there's two things I would argue. The future of capitalism, I think, is the same as the future of impact investment, right? It has to be mission-driven to deal with the issues and get the profit motive working. But two things that I would call for the future of capitalism: more transparency and more collaboration. And for transparency, you do need to have some standards so we can have something to build off in metrics and projections, because you manage what you measure. And with regard to collaboration, I do hope that we are moving to have a group of leaders, a group of board directors and executives that understand how to facilitate collaboration. That's not so easy, because it's not that easy to find metrics for collaboration. It's not that easy to make people believe, truly believe, that your gain, it's not someone else's loss. It can grow the pie. This is hard. And so I do hope that boards of directors and the next generation of executives understands that we can grow the pie for everyone, including the bottom of the pyramid. We can flip the pyramid, and it's good. It really is good for everyone. You have to believe that, and there has to be a leap of faith. And the investment banks and such are not the best at taking leaps of faith, but hopefully we do have the next generation that will.
I think that's a very fair comment. And I will say in some places, like, in the solar space, so CS has been very progressive and active in its investment, its proprietary investment in the solar space. That was done just because it was an innovative, good investment. Now, in terms of an impact investment, in many people's definition or impact thesis, that fits as an impact investment. And it's mostly the institutions that look to partner with CS or buy that because of its illiquidity profile. So it's not really, it's not something that we even sell mostly in the private bank. It's mostly institutionally sold now. We're fighting for that in the private bank, that we want some of that for our impact investing clients on the private banking side. So the question is, are investors driving it? So, and our sustainability network, so the LGBT product that came to the US, that product was driven by CS's sustainability network. The employees actually are the ones, not investors, that pressed CS to launch that product. And so sometimes it's employees, it's the passion of the people that are there, it'll be investors that reverse inquiry want product, but there's so much interest in the industry. I mean, ultimately, banks and brokerage firms will create product where they think they're going to be able to sell things. And in some cases, just like every other entity, we all have foundations and philanthropic arms of our for-profit entities that will want to do good things, but ultimately they're going to try to create product where they think they can sell and be profitable. And so the question is, has there been enough of this? There's been so much talk around it. The issue has been the pressing from the individuals like myself and a lot of the entities, a lot of the employee networks or parts of the bank that we know it will be profitable. If we build it, they will come, is our argument. There has not been enough pull from the investor side for us to build some of the institutional to scale product that we want and we are. But it's been a struggle.
Anyway, that grassroots demand, that is going to be ultimately what will drive it. That's why I referenced this intergenerational transfer of wealth. Because I've sat in rooms, I'm sure you have too. You sit in a room with 40, 27-year-old billionaires, because they happen to have been born lucky, right? And you go in there and you are actually blown away by the extent to which they are earnestly conscious of what they've been born into, and that they want to do this right. And they have the tools, they have the transparency, and they will tell you that they will not accept that there is any dichotomy between long-term corporate profitability and societal need. They will not give up a competitive return. They know they can do both. And so it is really heartening when you talk to this next generation of billionaires, because the reality is they're going to figure it out, and the tools are at hand now to do it. And the structures are at hand.
And they're going to invest in firms
Right.
that have these types of investments. They're going to look for investment return. They're not trying to bankrupt themselves. They're going to look for the investment return. They're going to look for this type of impact and sustainability types of investments.
Yes, yes, it's not idealistic, it's happening. It's happening. There are so many initiatives that are going on to engage, well, what some people would call, the biggest emerging market of all, which is women, right? So many initiatives to get women and the ethic that maybe is somewhat different, get them engaged in management, in leadership. You have organizations, you have companies. Look at Qualcomm. So this idiot commentator I saw on CNBC the other day would also question, why would Qualcomm spend millions of dollars to create a boot camp for 8-year-old girls who want to learn STEM, right? So science, technology, engineering, and math, they're doing a boot camp for 8-year-old and under girls. That's throwing away money, right, Qualcomm, right? No, oh my God, it's brilliant, right? And so I think it is, God bless Ashoka for what they've been doing. And I think that, yes, it is, a little idealistic, but if we weren't idealistic, like, frankly, why bother? Why bother, And so, yeah, I think, hopefully, I think 15 years, things take longer sometimes than we think. When it comes to creating standards, I sit on the board of an organization called the SASB, the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board. It's a US kind of pragmatic implementation of the GRI, the Global Reporting Initiative, which has hundreds of metrics for environmental, social, and governance disclosures. But when you think about the steps forward, there's pieces coming into play, the pieces of infrastructure that are going to be very sensible, very pragmatic, and idealism is good, And again, we have to make the dialogue. I started by talking about the language of sustainability. We have to make the dialogue not based on judgmental and values and ideology, but that's different from having aspirations, right? So you want to be pragmatic. You want to use enhanced analytics. You want to be objective, but being, optimistic and wanting people to work to their best and highest purposes, and hoping that we have like a planet to live on. That's good. That's very good. Standards do take some time. And so the 15 years of not having a thing called a social enterprise might take a little time, maybe more than 15 years, but that's okay. In the history of the planet, it's not so long.
And just to add to that too, I mean, your point about the women's market, I mean, yes, there's this broader definition of what you define as impact, but our CEO, one of the new market initiatives for the US market is a focus on the women's market. And it's to create product around the women's market because women do want to invest in women. And so it might not fit inside of the impact investing sleeve necessarily of a foundation, but there are definitely women that want to invest in women-run companies. There are new venture funds, and CS is going to be sponsoring its own venture fund for women tech entrepreneurs. There's a big interest by our own clients that want to back women in specialized sectors and specialized industry. But I met with the National Minority Business Council in New York. I've met with CGI. I mean, two of their big sectors and their big focus areas are in the areas of women. So it's many different entities that I think you're right on target, but that's a huge interest.
CGI has a Women and Girls Initiative. One of my board directors helps run that. The State Department also is very involved in women. Look at what CalPERS is doing. Look at what GMI is doing, getting women on boards. This is huge. This is real.